April 26, 1986, there was an explosion which released 6.7 tons of radiation high clouds into the atmosphere. Chernobyl. The radioactive material produced a plume 1,200 meters high at least 10 days. The pro-metal element released includes caesium, strontium, iodine, americium, and plutonium. The volatile dust dispersed over Northeast Europe, Ukraine, Belarus, toward Sweden, and Finland, dropping contaminated rain on Scandinavia. Radiation is absorbed by trees, foliage, berries, fungi, and moose, deer, cows, birds. Atmospheric inputs enter ocean, Baltic Sea, North Sea, Black Sea, Mediterranean Sea, Atlantic. The worst contaminated 137 TS has a half-life of up to 30 years and bioaccumulates in fish. Honor March to commemorate one of the history's worst man-made disasters. 20 years ago, a reactor explodes at Chernobyl nuclear plant. 56 people were killed, another 9,300 are expected to die of cancer caused by the huge radiation release, and 300,000 were permanently evacuated from the area.
20 years later, Chernobyl remains a very dangerous place, and yet some people have insisted on returning. ABC's David Wright reports tonight from the dead zone.
So contaminated that workers shooting up the holes can be stay 15 minutes. This entire region has seen stirring cancer cases, especially among the children of Chernobyl. Scientists say it's difficult to tell. 25-year school teacher and mother just diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Yes, he says, but that doesn't do my pain any less. Some local authorities have their own ideas how to keep safe. The unit to measure radiation dosage is REM, which stands rotation equivalent in men. It represents the amount of radiation needed to produce a particular amount of damage to living tissues. That thus REM determines how much harm a person suffers. High radiation doses tend to kill cells, while low doses tend to damage our ultra-genetic code of radiation cells. High-low doses can kill so many cells that tissues and organs can be damaged instantly. This in turn may cause a rapid body response, often called acute radiation syndrome. Higher the radiation dose, the sooner the effect of radiation will appear and higher the probability of death. This syndrome was observed in many emergency workers responding to the 1098 Chernobyl accident. Obvious, 20 died in the first 3 months from the radiation injuries. Two more patients died during the first day as a result of a combined injuries from the fire and radiation. But how does radiation affect human body? Hair. The losing of hair includes that thinning clumps occurs when radiation exposure is 200 rem or higher. The brain. Since brain cells do not reproduce, they won't be damaged directly unless the exposure is 5000 rem or greater. The thyroid. The thyroid gland is subtable radioactive. Radioactive iron can struck all the parts of the thyroid by taking the potassium iodide, what can reduce the effect of the exposure.
Chernobyl disaster, 26 April 1986, a day that shocked the world and scarred it for years to come. 26 April 1986. Testing was carried out on the reactor 4 to see how it works with low power output. 12:28 p.m. One of the operators made a mistake. Instead of keeping the power output at 30%, he did not reset the controller, which caused the power to drop to 1%. 12:54. Safety alarms sounded because of high void bubble built up in the reactor but were switched off. High void build up meant that the radiation in the reactor was not properly displaced, hence increased the steam amount and raised the power. 1:19 a.m. Water flow to the reactor was increased to counteract the high void amounts and cool it down. Although dangerous, the test was resumed. 1:23 a.m. As scheduled, turbine 8 is shut down. This caused a huge increase of power. 1:23, 40 seconds a.m. Operators recognized an emergency and therefore shut down the reactor. All the control rods were automatically lowered. 1:23:44. All of the control rods had 6-inch radioactive graphite ends. As they entered the core, a power surge occurred which was 100 times more than the normal operating level. Each Chernobyl reactor was capable of producing 1000 megawatts of power. 1:24 a.m. The power surge led to a massive increase of steam. Therefore, pipes began to burst. The reactor core started to fracture. As a result, an explosion occurred, lifting the 1,000-ton cover and flipping it on its side. Large amounts of steam, heat, and radiation immediately started to escape to the atmosphere. One 28 a.m. First firemen started to arrive. Day 5. Another problem was found in the reactor, which made the situation even worse. As the fuel rods ignited, they started to melt, forcing their way through the concrete below, which held a large water module. An operation began to drop sand and lead on the top of the open reactor to try to smuggle the fire. Of course, there was a danger of the reactor being so hot the sand will simply turn into lava and heat things up even more. If the molten fuel was to reach the water, it would create a geothermal explosion 10 times bigger than an atomic bomb, leveling ground up to a 200-kilometer radius. Unfortunately, the water module could not be remotely emptied, therefore 2 volunteers were found, which dived into the highly radioactive water and opened the floodgates. The aftermath. The Chernobyl disaster released up to 30,000 roentgens per hour into the atmosphere. 2 is normal amount, 400 is enough to kill a person. During the disaster, some employees and firemen received more than 1,500 roentgens per hour. After the accident, 237 people suffered from acute radiation sickness. 31 died within the first 3 weeks. More than 135,000 people were evacuated from the danger area. As a result of the accident, there has been many phenomena in that area. Children were born deformed, a red forest developed, and is now known as the most contaminated area in the world.